Moving, rotating, and scaling objects. Now we are going to move some things around. Instructions. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Introduction. Now that you have learned how to whiz around the work plane, it's time to really get down to working with objects. In this lesson, you are going to learn more about the physical properties of objects. Instructions. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Placing a box. We are going to need an object to manipulate. Let's start with a box. Place a box exactly within the hint. I'm going to go to my Shapes menu, left click, and drag out a box. It says it right here in instructions, drag a box to the work plane and place it within the hint. Now look at the hint. You'll notice that it isn't precisely aligned on major grid lines. It is not uncommon to miss the major grid lines when you first put an object down. Let's fix that. I am going to use my zoom in to get me closer to this object, and you can see that I'm just off and I'm not quite within that hint. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Nudging. Now that you have the box on the work plane, how do you move it just a tiny bit? We can nudge it into place. Nudging is moving any selected object in small, controlled hops by using the arrow keys. Each hop is a 1 millimeter step. You can also nudge objects along the Z-axis by holding Control or Command on a Mac while pressing the up or down arrow keys. Finally, you can nudge objects in 1 centimeter steps along any axis by also holding down the Shift key. Instructions. Use the arrow keys to push the box over to the nearest major grid line. I am clicking my left arrow key only. You can see when I do that, I'm moving 1 millimeter or one box at a time. I can click my left key and go in the opposite direction. I can click my up key and it goes in the Y direction, or my down key and it goes in the opposite Y direction. If I hold down the Command key on my Apple computer and hit the up key, it moves it in the Z direction. And if I hit my down key, it moves it down in the Z direction. If I hold the Shift key down, it will move in 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter increments, right, left, backwards, forwards. And if I hold the Shift key and the Command key, I can use my up arrow in the Z direction or my down arrow in the Z direction. Go ahead, pause the video, and try that out. When you're done, unpause and click Next. The power of undo. What if you moved your object too far? You can fix it very easily using undo and redo. You'll find the undo and redo tools in the menu bar, represented by arrows pointing in a clockwise and counterclockwise direction. In fact, if you do think about it, these tools are like going forwards and backwards in time. They are right here. You can do undo or redo, backwards and forwards. Use undo until your object has returned to its original position. I had many undos in here because I was demonstrating for you. There we go. Continue to the next step. Rotation. In the last lesson, you learned about translation, linear movement along our 3 axes. the X axis, the Y axis, and the Z axis. Let's look at our 3D modeler salute. Each finger also has a circular motion moving around an axis, like a bicycle wheel rotating around its axle. Let's try some rotations. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Rotation handles. When you have an object selected, Tinkercad will display 3 rotation handles in the shape of a semicircle. X, Y, it's not quite right, Z. Okay. They look like little fish hooks. Grabbing these handles will allow you to rotate around one axis at a time. Next, we'll see what happens when we use them. Continue to the next step. Rotate protractor. Rotation protractor. When you mouse over a rotation handle, a protractor will appear to help you measure your rotation. When you click and hold the handles as you move your mouse, the object will begin to rotate. Tinkercad has 3 methods of rotation: fine, medium, and large. As you rotate your object, if you keep your cursor outside of the protractor, your rotation will move in 1-degree hops. When you keep your cursor within the protractor, your rotation will make 22.5-degree hops. Lastly, when you hold down Shift, your object will snap to large 45-degree hops. Move your object in 1-degree, 22.5-degree, and 45-degree steps. Undo the rotation to return your object to its original position. So if I'm looking at this object from the top, you can see that I'm looking at it from the top from my view cube. I have 1 rotation arrow to select. If my mouse is far away from my object, I can move in 1-degree increments as seen here. If I bring my cursor closer to my object, I will now select 22.5-degree snaps or hops, as you can see here. And if I hold down the Shift key on my keyboard, you will see that I now will move in 45-degree hops for my object. Okay. So close to the object is 22.5 degrees. Away from the object is 1 degree. And holding the Shift key down is 45 degrees. I'm going to click Undo and try that again. Holding the Shift key, 45 degrees. Okay. Continue to the next step. Next. Okay. If you are in my class at this time, I would ask that you take your object and move it to the top of the work plane and take out another box to complete the next task, and do so between each one rather than undoing. If you are not in my class, you may proceed forward without doing that. Rotating around the X and Y axes. Rotating around the Z axis is the most intuitive because the Z axis extends perpendicular from the work plane. The X and Y axes both travel through the work plane, so sometimes it's hard to determine which axis is which. From the home position, the Y axis extends forward or away from you into the screen, while the X axis extends from the left of the screen to the right. Rotate your object around its X axis. Undo the rotation to return to your object to its original position. Again, if you are in my class, you are not undoing your object, you are moving it to the top of the work plane and taking a new box. If you are not in my class, feel free to click Undo. So I'm going to look at my box, take my X axis, hold my Shift key, and rotate. I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to go ahead, move my object to the top of my work plane, and take a new box. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Scaling an object. Now that we've mastered translation and rotation, it's time to stop moving the object and start changing it. Scaling is increasing or decreasing the size of an object. When you select an object, you will see 5 white and 4 black squares. These are scaling handles. When your mouse is over these handles, you might want to see dimensions for length, height, or width. Instructions. Mouse over the black handles and you will see 1 dimension or axis. Mouse over the white handles and you will see 2. You will see both the X and the Y axis. Mouse over the white handle on top and you will see the Z axis dimension. Okay. Continue to the next step. Click Next. Scaling along the Z-axis. Let's start by making the object taller or shorter. The white handle at the top of the box is the Z-axis scale handle, and it allows you to increase or decrease an object's dimensions along the Z-axis. Instructions. Grab the white handle above the object and pull in any direction. Undo the scaling and return it to its original shape. So again, in my class, you are not doing that. You are going to stretch it to 30, and then you're going to move it to the back of the work plane. Take a new one out and click Next. Okay. When using the corner handles, you can change objects along both the X and Y dimensions. As you do this, you will see a measurement for each. Grab a white corner handle and pull. Okay. Again, we are not undoing the scale, so we're going to take the object, put it to the back of the work plane, and bring out a new one. Continue to the next step. Next. X and Y axes side drag handles. If you only want to change one dimension, as we did with the Z-axis, you can use the black drag handles on the side. This will give you finer control over the shape of your object and only show you a measurement for the dimension you are working with. Grab a black side handle, and pull. So let's come here and pull. Okay. Bring the other side in. I can rotate and bring the back out. Okay. Again, I'm not going to undo it. I'm going to move it to the top and drag out a new box. Go ahead, click Next. Shift Scale, proportional scaling. If you want to scale an object so that it maintains its proportions, meaning that if you want to change the size but not the shape, while scaling an object, hold down the Shift key. So holding the Shift key down on my keyboard, I'm going to grab the upper right white grip and stretch it. Okay. Now let's try that one more time. I'm going to click Undo so that we can see the whole thing. Shift key down. While the Shift key is down, I'm holding down the left key on my mouse and dragging my mouse to the upper right and seeing that stretch. Okay. Again, do not undo. Go ahead and move that object to the top of your work plane. Drag out another one. Okay. Click Next. Previously, when you were scaling an object, the center of your object moved too. What if you wanted to keep your object centered? For example, you wanted to make the wings on your supersonic robotic butterfly wider while keeping the wings centered on its back. How do you do that? All you need to do is hold down the Alt key or Alt option on a Mac. So you're looking for that Option key here in class. So you're going to hold that. Let's go to the instructions. Grab any handle while holding the Alt key and pull. So I'm going to pull this right black key, grip. I'm holding down the Alt key, and you can see that my middle is not moving, but my left and right sides are. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move that example to the top of the work plane, bring out a new object, and click Next. Proportional scaling about the center. What if you want the flower on your organically grown, bio-powered death ray fly trap to be a little bit smaller while not changing shape and still keeping it centered on the stalk of doom? Hold the Shift and Alt keys. Okay, so grab any handle while holding Shift and Alt, or for us here in class, we're going to hold Shift and the Option key. Okay, undo the scaling and return your, Shift, Alt, or Option, and now all three axes. I can make it smaller, I can make it bigger, but it's all moving on that center point. Okay. Again, we are not going to undo it. We are going to move it to our work plane and bring out a new object. Click Next. Scale and rotate equals skew. What if you want to create a shape that is not in the Shapes menu? For example, here, there isn't a parallelogram. How do you make one? Don't worry, you can just make your own in 2 easy steps. Rotate the box 22 degrees. So for my parallelogram, I am going to rotate so I can see the front of my box. I have one rotate handle here. I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'm going to rotate 22.5 degrees. Oh, my bad. I just went 45. So I'm going to undo. I'm not going to hold the Shift key. I'm going to keep my cursor close to my object and I'm going to rotate 22.5 degrees. Okay, so rotate your box 22.5 degrees. Use the black side handle to stretch the rotated box. So I'm going to change my view slightly, find that black grip, and I'm going to stretch out into my box. Okay. If needed, nudge your shape into the targeted position. So I can nudge or I can move to get it where I want it to be. Go ahead, click Next. I do not want to delete an object. I want to keep this on my work plane. However, if I did want to delete an object, I would simply hit the Delete or Backspace key and make it go away. Now I'm going to use my undo and bring it back. Continue to the next step. You are done. This was a challenging lesson. You did a great job. If you ever need a refresher on moving, rotating, or scaling objects, you can always come back and repeat this awesome lesson. If you are in Miss Coyle's class or if you're in my class, please have me check your work plane to see that you have all of these shapes on it. And then you can go ahead, click Done, and go to the next lesson.